Welcome to Awake to Oneness Radio. I am Caroline Chang, your host. The mission of Awake to Oneness Radio is to inspire the world to awaken to the universal truth of oneness. Science is now teaching us that everything is energy, and that energy is interconnected and interdependent. In essence, that energy is one thing. Now, ancient wisdom and spirituality has been teaching the truth of oneness for eons, and science is now catching up. But this science of quantum physics is actually over 100 years old. It's not new science we're talking about. So this is something I think everybody should know by now, but they don't. And I do believe that the simple truth of understanding and knowing the simple truth of oneness, that we're all connected, will be what will bring world peace to our world. And today's show topic is absolute awareness with Noel. Thank you, Noel, so much for being my guest on Awake to Oneness.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for producing the show. Wonderful.
Thank you. I discovered Noel on YouTube, where I discovered a lot of my guests. I love YouTube. What would we do without YouTube? So I know a little bit of your journey, but can you please share with our listeners your awakening, your journey of awakening?
Sure. So my story before I guess got the punchline of the cosmic joke, as they say.
Okay.
It started out as really just, a meditator and a seeker. I do believe, and I say this in the videos, that I believe that everyone's seeking, even though there's not necessarily an awareness of spiritual seeking in any of those regards. Maybe people are looking for it in things or relationships or events. Yes. But a longtime meditator, very much a self-improvement person.
Yes.
And then through just had some glimpses or some awakening experiences without really knowing that's what was going on. It wasn't, big as they say, angels and trumpets, but just sort of, something else might be here. And, you say in your intro that not everyone knows. And I think there's an instinctual component to being that knows that there's something there.
Yes.
But this bigger awareness of that, of what's really going on here, isn't always apparent. Then I end up just finding out about non-duality. I didn't know that there was such a thing, and it's sort of then things kind of locked as to that's what this might be. Kept exploring a little bit, and then one day it just, as it does, and not through some magical thing, it just sort of became clear that that we are it, that this is it. There's just this happening, and I think I've shared with, I don't necessarily, not for any reason, but don't really share the awakening experience because I just don't really find it that interesting. I mean, it is in some cases,
yeah.
but
I think it's good, kind of, in the sense, the reason I think it's good to share the awakening experience, because we all are going to awaken differently, uniquely. No two are going to be the same. Just like no two snowflakes are the same. No two individual are the same. They're uniquely different. So, and I think when we share our awakening, it has others think, wow, that's something that can happen to me. They can identify with it, and not think, put you up on a pedestal, which I know that's not what you're asking people to do. But when you share that, a lot of people identify with those awakening moments.
Agreed, 100%. And that's why I don't, if someone asks, I don't shut them down and say, it's not, why would you care? Because it is. And in fact, in that same energetic feeling, that's why I started making the videos and why I will do non-duality talks with people. I just love talking about it, and there's so much gratitude for it, whatever it is happening. But
I just want to say, I love you're using the terminology non-duality, which some people may not know. I know, actually, because what awoke in me was science. And that word non-duality is the scientific word for oneness, you know? So you share in your words when you say non-duality, because some of the listeners might not be familiar.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so oneness is a beautiful term, and it does a lot, but the mind likes to find duality in everything. So oneness can have the implication that there's something else other than oneness, even though by definition. And so non-duality or Advaita is not two. So it kind of turns the brain on itself. It's like, what do you mean not two? And it kind of it almost stops it, in its tracks. Right. In that component. But I actually use the term oneness. I use non-duality, Advaita, the absolute. Yes. There's no I don't really have any sticky words that I don't feel are useful, because all words are dualistic. So whatever the conversation brings up, or whatever thoughts arise in attempting to describe the indescribable, then that's okay. So that's what I mean by non-duality.
Right. I like that. I like that not to. Because I worked with someone before who always uses that term a lot. Oneness, and he uses it with oneness. He says oneness means not to. So I like that. Yes. Yeah,
it's and so it does I think anyway that it does a really good job of sort of turning the mind on itself for a second, even stunning it for a moment, almost like a Zen koans that are these little stories that make you that make the mind, it almost stuns it for a moment. But yeah, so that's what I mean by that. But oneness is perfect as well. Okay. So I guess when the page turned, so to speak, it was so ordinary and so just normal, and yet beautiful in that same way. It just was like, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, it wasn't anything massive like that. But it was just like, oh, it's always been this way. It's always been this. And I mean, I get goosebumps. Right. Because that's the truth. And in conversations with people, I have it seems that I get contacted by people who watch the videos, and I love all the questions, but I get a lot of individuals or people that are individuals, they get it in this logical way, like it makes sense, but they're just quite not there, and so I was, there's some programming here that's just to be helpful, be of service. And so that's, I think, why, even though for a while I was like, I'm not going to do the videos, and I was just like, I don't know if I should, if it even matters. But then I would get a note that said, oh, this is so helpful, thank you so much. And that wanting to be of service, desire to be of service, kind of has been driving the continuation of that and the conversations that I have. Right. But it's interesting because there's this frustration that can arise. Like, I get it, but I don't get it. And it's like, when you get it, you realize that there's nothing to get. And the best thing about talking about it is it's nearly impossible. Right. And yet, we make attempts to do so. Yes. But it's oneness, the absolute, the infinite consciousness. It's you can't escape it. It's even if you want to. So the search for, you are what you seek, the search for this place home. I think the reason that there's so much laughter when people realize what's going on is that they're seeing that what they've been looking for has just been here the whole time.
Yes, exactly.
I think it's amazing.
Yeah, I do. I smiled when you said that when you awoke, and it was like no big deal. And in a sense, it is and it isn't. For me, it was quantum physics. It was What the Bleep. It was a documentary about quantum physics. So I had been seeking for many years, because what was taught to me, what society was teaching me, what church was teaching me, none of that resonated in my soul from the time I was a very small child. My parents sent me to Catholic school, so I was taught all the dogma of Catholicism. Never resonated with me, but I also was brought up in a strict home where you couldn't question anything like that.
Sure.
So when I got older in my teens, that's when I started seeking material, other things, metaphysical and spiritual, reading every book I can get my hands on. But it's still, for me, there was a missing piece. So what was the answer that I was seeking, which I didn't know what really I was seeking, but the answer was in quantum physics, when I discovered that scientifically has proven that everything is one thing. And like you said, it's not like anybody can be apart from it, be separate. You can't, like you said, there is no two-ness. There is only oneness. And when you really look at a molecular level, everything is energy, and that energy, that one energy, which makes up everything, makes up this desk, makes up the computer, makes up the trees outside. Every blade of grass is interconnected. When you look through those eyes, and when you understand that, it doesn't really, for me, I say it's very simple. Because I say you can look at something very simple, or you can make that same simple thing very complicated. Now, I'm not a scientist, so I could not give you the equations, the physical, none of that. I'm not a scientist. But I think if you try to break it down that way, a lot of people will get totally lost and say, I don't get it. But I try to explain it from a very simple, to think of each of us as a cell of God, if we want to use that term. For my term for God is all that is. I mean, there's nothing outside of God. Nothing exists but God. And so think of ourselves as a cell of God, but a holographic, multi-dimensional cell. Meaning, let's look at the word holographic. The best phrase for me that describes holographic is Rumi's quote: "You're not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop." So we think of ourselves as small and in size, and we can think of ourselves like a drop. But in that drop is all of God, not a part of God, but all, the entirety of God is in each of us. So that's how I try to explain it, where people can understand that it's not as complicated. We can make it complicated for sure, but we can also break it down so it's really simple.
Yeah, beautifully stated, definitely. And the mind likes to make things more difficult because then it has more stuff to figure out. Yes. It has relevance when it creates problems and complexities that are really non-existent. Yeah, there's so many beautiful metaphors. I like the drop in the ocean, the ocean and the drop. Also, waves or energetic contractions that are happening within consciousness. I've heard other people use, sand and sand castles. Yes. Those kind of there's it's wonderful that there are so many speakers and authors making these attempts, making these pointers, because they give us a lot of different things to look at. They give the mind a lot to sort of chew on and get that. But the ocean in a drop is a great one.
Yes, and I agree. You know what kind of is, because words are so limiting to communicate with. Words are the most difficult way to communicate. When we can, and we will one day be able to communicate telepathically, that will be, okay, I know exactly what you mean, because I'm feeling telepathically, you're feeling what that person is trying to say. And you don't have to say a word, but one person could look at one word very differently than another person, because we are unique. That's what I think I did. I leave that. We are unique, multi-dimensional, holographic aspect of God. And the uniqueness means that there's no, as an individual, no two people are alike. And so they're going to look at the same thing differently. So that's where words can sometimes get in the way. But right now we don't know how else to communicate other than words until we raise our consciousness to be able to telecommunicate.
Right. And, you know, some would say that every person that you know knows a different you. So
Yes.
there's I mean, you talk about the uniqueness of the individual of being the drop or of being the wave. And
Yes.
yet, you know, every family member, any friends that you have,
Right.
they all know a different set of stories around this energetic being.
Yes,
You know,
exactly.
that is you. And I find that fascinating as well.
Yes. Each person that knows you, like you say, has a different idea of you. No two people will have the exact same idea. They can have some things similar, but it's going to be uniquely their viewpoint of you. Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. And vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and then, you know, where it all breaks down is that you seem to, we all seem to think that, well, I know the real me, you know, which is just another set of stories
Exactly.
that are bundled together. You know, and yet before you even had this aspect of memory, there were other people in the form of parents that were formulating these stories, you know, about you. So it gets again, this is, and maybe this is the example of the mind trying to complicate certain things, but I don't find it necessarily complicated. I just think that it's when those thoughts arise, those are allowed to be, and it's fascinating to think about. If you knew every person on Earth, if you're able to meet them, there'd be 7.5 billion versions of you.
Yes.
And then, you know, if you have a dog, your dog thinks you're a saint. That's a whole other, that's out of the human realm. Just goes on and on and on.
Yes. Now you kind of skipped over the question though.
Meaning sorry.
You talked to kind of like, okay, it wasn't that, but now can you share with us your awakening?
Yeah, so just as mentioned before, there were some glimpses that happened. One was after a meditation, and I should say that, you know, I've meditated for a really long time, since college actually, and I never really meditated to go anywhere. It was just always around mindfulness, and got into Zen meditation for a while. Okay. And I wouldn't even meditate on meditating. Like I wouldn't meditate and then think about like what happened during it. Right. But one time I got this sort of this vision that I will call like a sealing of souls. Okay. And I'll tell another story of another glimpse after that. But basically I got this vision of sort of being up outside of Earth, even outside of the universe. And it was, when I say sealing of souls, it was kind of like this connectedness, still connected, but as babies were being born, as beings were being born, there was I'm going to take that one. Right. With all of its problems and all of its triumphs, and joys, and, you know, and tragedies, I'm taking that one, and boom, and it would go down and occupy that body. Right. And I was like, that's an interesting, you know, thing. And so that was just like a little glimpse that made me more curious. I was like, that seems incredibly likely. That seems more likely than any other things. And then the other, you know, another sort of powerful glimpse, because there's always been little hints, you know, along the way. It just happened during a tragedy, where my wife was pregnant with our third child, and during his birth, it became clear that things were going south. Right. And I didn't sit there, you know, I was saying, come on, you know, to him. Right. But I wasn't like, please fix it. Right. There was something that was popped behind me that just kept saying, so this is what this feels like. So this is what this feels like, as if this other than the character of Noel was observing the sorrow and the tragedy and just the world being pulled out from under in a way that was a witness almost.
Right. Yes.
And of course there was sadness and sobbing and you know, I mean, it's, you know.
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
But at the time, this, and it wasn't even an awareness of this happening. It was like a later reflection of, wow, the whole time that this was going really, really badly.
Yes.
There was this mantra of, so this is what this feels like, you know. And that was actually prior to the sealing of souls or whatever, you know.
Wow. Okay.
That you would call it. But I think that experience kind of led to this idea of, hey, this baby had an amazing, was such a gift to our family's lives while he was with us and talking to him, you know, before he was born. But it just sort of became clear that, like, maybe he wanted just the unconditional love ride.
Right. Yes.
When it was, and there's all these other little indicators. I try not to look too much for meaning in things, because but it was, there were so many little indicators, like he was really late coming. So he was really late to show up, and it was and they were like, hey, we gotta get him.
Yes.
And it was as if he was like, I'm not here for that part.
Okay.
You know? I'm not here for the world part. I'm just here for the lovey-dovey ride in this,
the
in this
warm,
wonderful space.
That warmness, that love, that
yes, exactly. And then when it was time for them, for the doctors to say, well, it's time to come out, he's like, well, I'm out, because you know, that's it. So
what did actually happen? Was he born? Did he ever breathe this oxygen, or was he stillborn?
He was basically stillborn. I think that he breathed for a little bit, and then he immediately went into assisted breathing. Okay. And that was for about an hour, and then they then they stopped. But you know, in all of the and I didn't even know that's what we would talk about. So it's not. Well,
it's fine, because that's what's coming up in the now moment.
Yeah, exactly. But also,
thank you so much for sharing that.
Of course, you know, and to be able to speak about the gift that was, you know, and speak openly. So on Sunday was his birthday. He would have been 3. So we talk to our kids about it, and we have conversations about it, and it's and they're healthy, you know. It's a healthy thing to talk with my wife about, and talk with our kids about, and if they ask, you know, then it comes up. But yeah, so that was a pretty big glimpse, I guess. Like, you know, not like, oh, am I a horrible parent because I didn't say or feel these other things? Like, none of that really happened. It just sort of stuck out as a really, I mean, that's a big pop to sit there and you know, and I guess in psychology they might call it, you know, dissociation. Like, that's how you were dealing with the trauma, but I was there.
It sounds like to me it might have been even him saying, "This is what it feels like." Like you were hearing him, and I don't you know my story. I can tell you know that I have a son in spirit, and I have a son in spirit, just like you have a son. He's not gone, gone at all. And to me, that's another big part of my message. And I didn't know it was going to be, because when I got the inspiration to launch this show, it was all about, let's wake this world up to oneness, that we're all one, so we can cut the nonsense out, cut the war, violence, all this needs, you know. So that was my initial. I didn't realize that I would become so much a part of, also because I have a son in spirit, become a part of the movement of also awakening people to the fact that there is no death. And every soul, every divine spirit has a plan. And that was his plan. He's like you said, I'm like, I like it here. And okay, I don't want to be there. I want to be, where I was. It was like, but that was his plan. No matter, even if he was here just an hour, that was his plan. And he's perfectly fine. And he's always with you. He's always with his siblings. And when we understand that, we listen more because they're always trying to communicate with us. So we listen more, and we can even hear. I know I hear Kyle all the time in my heart. And I do have physical proof from a medium and from a researcher that I was talking about before we start recording, that I have a guest coming from that's going to connect from Brazil. There's a Brazilian researcher by the name of Nonduality who said, I have tons of images of my son from spirit, from Sonia. And my first, my first reading, I didn't go looking for a medium when Kyle transitioned. I knew I wanted to have a reading, but I didn't go look. I said to myself, that medium has to come to me. And that medium was recommended. And I didn't know when I started this show that I was going to even have mediums on my show. But a medium was recommended by another guest. So I had her on. And after I recorded a show with her, I said, that's the medium for me. And she had a very long waiting list, almost 2 years. I said, just put me at the end of that list. Whenever my number pops up, contact me. So I was emailing her a week before my son's birthday, and she gifted me a reading on his birthday, which was Thanksgiving Day, 2016. Which and I was surprised because it was Thanksgiving Day. But she was told before I contacted her that by her spirit guides that she was giving the reading, and she didn't know who until she got my email. But anyway, to make a long story short, in that reading, I have my son's voice. We were in Zoom, just like we're using now. My son started to try to communicate from the moment she invited him in. And she's like, what's this crazy noise? It's like crazy. It was but like halfway through that session, we could actually hear his voice. And I have his voice on tape. So I have physical proof, which I didn't need. I didn't need physical proof to know that my son is not gone. But I think, and kind of got this message from him recently. He's like, Mom, I'm giving you so much physical proof, not for you, but for you to share with the world. So others and other parents like yourself can know for a fact. Because when you know they're not gone, they're just next door. And, you just can't go next door. You can't, they're in a different dimension. They can see us, they're with us, but that's such a big important message to me for parents, especially, because I think the hardest, loss, we lose our parents, we lose our grandparents, we lose best friends, but I think the hardest, and it's not a loss, I kind of hear Kyle, because he told me he's the co-host of this show. He just corrected me. He said, Mom, I'm not lost, I'm right here. He did. So I try to not use those common words when people speak about someone on the other side, someone in spirit. They want us to know. Our kids especially want us to know, I'm right here. I didn't go anywhere, Yeah. But yeah, continue, share.
Yeah, so that was, what ended up happening was just so much love and gratitude for discovering what is. And I live in a small town, and there aren't like non-duality meetups that you can go to or anything like that. So I had this idea for just making a video as a way to maybe like meet other people. I was watching a lot of them, and there was this gratitude and just wanting to share. So I made one, and then another one, and then another one, and then people started contacting me, and I just said, well, what I'll do is I'll just if anyone wants to ask questions, then I'll either respond to them directly or I'll answer in the video. And so some people will just send messages where they have a question. Some people will just send gratitude and thank you. And then other people, I'll set up Zoom conversations like this, and we'll just have a conversation to talk.
Awesome.
about it. Yeah.
I'm
But it's
smiling because that's kind of also my motivation. Just like you said, I live in a small town and there's no oneness or non-duality meetups up here. And I studied and really understood oneness at its core, not from the head, but from the heart. When
that's
I
where
understood
it is, yeah.
that, yeah, from the heart. When I understood oneness from the heart, I wanted to have more conversations with people that kind of was in that same alignment. But locally, no, there is none. So I said, okay, I know what I'll do. I'll start an internet radio show. And actually, at that time, it was audio only, and I was doing live interviews at that time when I first started. Ooh, it was now 4.5 years ago. So,
Oh, wow.
but this was the reason I started, was to have conversations with people like you.
Yeah, and I mean, it's wonderful too. Some of the questions that we'll get asked is like, you watch TV, you like sci-fi, but which is great, because I like sci-fi or whatever.
Yeah.
But I find that I'm always reading a book about Advaita or non-duality, and I think the reason that has just sort of stuck is that what I say is it's like hearing different bands play your favorite song.
Okay.
There's so many different speakers and authors with their flavor
Right.
of it.
Yes.
And it's just fascinating to me.
Yes.
To read about it. And there's also there's a video, there's an author, his name's Greg Good. I can't name of any of his books right now, but he's written some really cool books on non-duality, and he tells a story about having a professor, and when he finally got it, he ran to the professor and said, I get it, I know what you're talking about, and he says that his professor said, good, now go tell others.
Yes.
And
yeah, I was just gonna,
I love that.
I'm gonna write down his name.
Okay.
And also I wanted to say to you that when I got it, and it was like here, not here, when I really understood oneness in my heart and soul, it's like something woke up inside of me, and I wanted to run and tell everybody I know.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, to me, this is so simple. Why don't they get it? But then I realized, okay, everybody is exactly where they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
So you said his name is Greg Good.
Greg Good, Goode, I think.
Okay, all right. I gotta check him out.
And in fact, Caroline, just to comment on what you said there, me seeing that video with him say that was a huge relief for me, because I did the same thing.
Yeah.
You want to run from the mountaintops.
Yes.
And tell everybody, like, hey, you don't need to be on your anxiety meds.
Yes.
Or whatever. Take them, I guess.
But you're right.
Do whatever. But then that sort of quiets down a little bit.
Right.
And thoughts are rising. Thoughts come up. They do whatever. The ego does what it wants. But it's, hey, people need to be living their lives. You shouldn't be telling them. And so watching that video of him saying, go tell others, I was like, you know what? It was almost oneness giving permission to oneness to just do whatever with it. And and I think that's great, because it's not about recruitment. It's not about convincing people that their way of doing it is wrong. And I see the spiritual ego at work on social media, where I mean, constantly, right? But even in non-duality, where where some say that the best teaching is no words at all, right. And you see people correcting others in it, and that's someone saying, I believe that by saying the 10 commandments 10 times a day, I'm going to go to heaven. That's what's happening. Okay. Proceed. Yeah, I have no problems. In fact, I just posted something. Worship whomever or whatever you want, or don't. But if you're leading from a place of love, all is good. That's it. I mean, that is it. It's all about unconditional love, and so many spiritual teachings attempt to point to it. And then you know, some other things got in charge of it, decided that, you know, we can't really let people be that free. Well, you know, people need restrictions and laws and rules. And so then they create a religion, you know, around it. But the beauty of understanding, you know, oneness and the absolute and I always jokingly say, what's going on here, which we don't really know. That's the beauty of all of it. Is that you can start to see these little hints popping up in spirituality. In fact, I did a video because I was watching Mary Poppins with my kids.
Okay.
And it's the dad. He's having this very, very stressful time in front of these bankers, and they're firing him. And I don't know what big of an insult it was, but they basically cut a hole in his hat. They cut off the top of his hat, and in the middle of it, it's as if he's having this awakening experience, and he's like, and with all due respect, you don't exist. And I was like, what? Rewound it. You know?
Yes.
And he sort of has this, you know, he's sort of laughing, and you can see these little hints of it peppered throughout. And maybe that's not even what people intend, but it's just little hints and Easter eggs in being that are showing that's the reality.
Now, when I say, I get that, and I'm not sure which one, because I've only seen the new Mary Poppins. I can't remember the old one, the first one with Dick Van Dyke. Was that the one you were watching?
It was that one. It was the old one.
Okay, the original. There's a new one that recently came out. So that was the one.
Yeah, we've seen that one a couple times as well in my household.
Okay, so that
started with the original.
Yeah, well, hey, that's the one to start with. But no, I was going to say that when I say to people, and they look at me like I have two heads, there is no right or wrong, none.
Mm-hmm.
It just is, and that isness is God. So what we label evil, demonic, wrong, anytime we label something, whatever we're labeling it, whatever we feel about it, it's not separate from God, and it's not separate from you. So that's what, and then and so that's the thing with light workers. They feel like, oh, it should be all love and light. But when you look at the yin and yang symbol, which for me is the perfect symbol of God, which is equal, the white and the black is equal. And in essence, it's all God. So if we're labeling something evil, if we're labeling a person evil, we're labeling God evil and also ourselves. Because we're not separate from that person, and that person is not separate from all that is. So I keep it that simple. So it's interesting that someone asked you about do you watch television? Which I watch a lot of television. I stopped. My spirit told me before I awakened, long ago, 2001. After 9/11, Spirit told me to turn off that news and never turn it back on. So I don't watch news, but I watch television shows and movies, and on Netflix and Hulu Plus, where it's you don't have the commercials.
Yeah.
To let that, I would also let that person know that asked that question. It's okay to watch television if that's what you want to do, if that's what your soul is inspiring you to do. So there's no judgment if somebody watches television. I watch television. There's no judgment if someone smokes. I wouldn't personally smoke, but I have no judgment against that.
Right.
Person, you know? So that's, I think, and there's a lot of people talking oneness and non-duality. They even have the non-duality, the science and non-duality conferences. Yes. So there's a lot of people actually talking about it. But when you say there is no right and wrong, there is no bad and good, you lose them. Because
I was going to say, isn't it interesting that you're delivering a message that lets people know they're off the hook?
Right.
All the self-criticism, all the things that are popping up, and that you're not good enough, you're not doing it, and they'll fight that statement.
Yes.
You can do no wrong.
Right.
Is the most freeing thing that you could ever be told.
Yes.
Everything that you're doing is just happening, and you can't do any wrong. Like, you're giving that's the best gift ever, and yet some people don't want to hear it. Right. They don't want to.
They want to stay in.
And that's okay. Isn't it weird that that's okay too? that they don't want to hear it.
Exactly. Everything is okay. Everything is okay. But when a person feels like, okay, it's just all about love, it's all about light, and what we consider dark and evil is separate from us, that's separateness. Nothing is separate.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's light workers are allowed. They're in the absolute, they're in the consciousness as well.
Right.
And that's fine. But yeah, it's and in fact you'll see speaking of YouTube and things like that, you'll see people that are posting, on their channel, they'll be posting about non-duality,
right?
And then say, a week later they're talking about visualization and the law of attraction, or us versus them, or conspiracy theories, and I don't have any judgments against them, but that's just kind of usually where I fall off in interest.
Yes.
Because as you said, good and evil.
Yeah.
They're all part of oneness. There is none. It's just it's a mental construct.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
And when that's known, it can't be unknown. It's deeper than known. It's almost like, I guess the closest you come is it's instinctual.
Yes.
Because knowing, seeing, understanding, again, that's all mind stuff.
Right.
But it can't be unknown when you see that. And yet the play of life still happens.
Yes.
And there's the appearance of tragedy and awful things happening. But when you see what is, when you realize the self, it's all allowed. And what you can't have good without bad anyway.
Exactly.
So what's better than always good? It's acceptance of everything as it's coming. I mean, and that's why I say I'm an self-improvement person.
Okay.
Because that used to be sort of the default setting. What are you doing today to improve yourself? And now I can't even say it without kind of starting to laugh, because there's nothing that can be improved upon.
Right.
And yet the pursuit of that starts with the base point of what isn't enough.
Right.
This isn't enough. I need to be better.
Okay, you're exactly right. Yes.
So much suffering comes from that. You're good enough as you are. This is it. That's you can't be better.
But when we understand it from the spiritual perspective, we understand that we are perfect in every now moment. Yeah. There's nothing, there is no lack. There is nothing but abundance. There is nothing but love. And there's nothing but truth. And who you are is God. You are God. I did a show recently with a dear friend of mine that lives in Jersey. He wrote the book, I Am God. And you are too, my friend. I love the title. Yes. So you are, and as God, you are creating, and you use the word play. I like either play, movie, game. You're creating this. And even there is what we quote unquote see a lot of challenges and suffering in this world. But when you understand from the spiritual perspective, that divine soul is creating it. Whether he or she knows it, but they're creating it. They're following their soul plan. And our soul plan looks like a spider web. It's not a straight line. You turn this way, you turn that way, whichever way you turn. And you go with both. You're actually, because it's multidimensional. If you decide to turn right, another part of you decide to turn left. And it's just, that's so the multidimensional us being God. Some people, blasphemy. Okay. Well, that's, if you want to think that's blasphemy, I'll allow your belief and please allow mine.
Yeah.
But that's the essence of who we are.
Yeah, and the same that are shouting blasphemy.
Yes.
Believe in a statement. I and the Father are one.
Right. Exactly.
It's like, well, okay, so what's
they're saying that's only for Jesus, not for
only.
you.
Yeah, exactly. But and there's all these different there's different things like you hear not to go down like the Christian path, but you
Right.
hear like people say Jesus was well aware of what was going on to people that were saying, I am God.
Right.
Probably smart enough to choose his words wisely, you
Right.
know, and how he phrased things, and it still
Right.
didn't end very well for him.
No.
You know,
But he
so
planned that. He planned it and knew that he planned it.
yeah,
He was awake. Yeah.
that was it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
acceptance, again, coming back to acceptance.
Yes.
So and I have no problems with belief systems or religion or anything. I mean, one of the things that I do love about science, you talked about it earlier, is that it's by design, it's open to being wrong.
Yes.
And corrected. And I think that that's absolutely amazing. And I also think one of my fascinations with it is that if you go deep enough into science, scientists will just say, well, we don't know. You know,
Yes.
we don't know what's going on here. We can
Yes.
keep trying, you know, and what great what a great way to have a job forever. It's like, well, we don't really know. We need more science, you know.
Because they are just touching the tip. You know, they're much further along than they were 200-300 years ago. You know?
Sure.
But they're just touching with quantum physics. They really just touch the tip of the iceberg. And there's a lot more to go. Because like I mentioned, Sonia Rinaldi, who's in Brazil, and Suzanne Giesman was the medium that gave me my reading where my son came through. And so Sonia is getting images from spirit of my son. So I say within 25 years, I could be off on how many years it'll take, but science will get to the point where we can communicate with technology, communicate to our loved ones on the other side. I mean, think how people would think in 1900s, we were walking around with cell phones.
I know,
laptops and computers. Imagine someone just dropped here from 1900. What? You know, so imagine what it, yes, imagine. And the thing is, it's we're going so much, technology is going so much faster, like every 6 months, every 3 months, every 6 months. So imagine 25 years from now. I can envision us having a phone we can pick up or some kind of device we could use to communicate with our loved ones who are no longer in their physical body, but they're still here. So, are not just our loved ones. Hey, I want to dial up Einstein today, you know? So, yeah. So, yeah, science is just at the tip of the iceberg, and there's so much.
Yeah, and the getting to that base point of like it always reaches a point where they can say, well, we just don't know.
Right.
And I think that's it's the beauty of science, but it's also really the beauty of being.
Yes.
Is that we spend, prior to awakening, you spend so much time trying to figure out what's going on.
Yes.
Why am I here? Yeah.
We almost said that.
What is going on? And then to just sit in awe. And there's other non-duality speakers on YouTube, and they'll I call it like punch drunk non-duality. Like they're fully feeling it and they hit record. And I love it. That's another flavor of it.
Yes.
But just to sit and be comfortable and know that this is all a mystery and that it's all unfolding is really one of the most beautiful things ever. Because why would you want to figure this out?
Yeah.
The mind does, the ego does, but it never can. It's never satisfied. There's not enough information. There's not enough research, even science, that you can give it to where it will finally surrender. I mean, arguably, maybe some people have egos that are like, I'm out, you know, and they're done. But I just, my assumption is that these programs have been running. It's been running the show for, you know, at this point, most of my life, that it's not going to really stop. So just let it do whatever it's going to do. I let it be the same as I let everything else be in life. And yet if a car's coming at you, get out of the way.
Right.
You know,
Right.
because that happens also. But
Yes.
it's
And
not saying like maybe I should move
yeah,
now. You
oh,
know.
let me maybe take a step backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for me, because a lot of people put a bad rap on the ego, and like I said, I don't put a bad rap on anything. I mean,
Mm.
if this is what you feel you want to do and need to do, alrighty. But for me, I do believe the ego passes with the body, with the what we call the material, and I say what we call material body because nothing is nothing is solid. Or I'll never forget when I heard that in 7th grade science class. My science teacher said nothing is truly solid. You put anything under a high power microscope, what do you see? All these moving particles we call atoms, and we recently discovered inside an atom is 99.99999% empty space.
Space. Yeah.
The truth, we are physical, what we call our physical body is still part of spirit. It's vibrating at a very low density that makes it appear solid, but it's not solid. And I had a thought before I said that, of course that thought, but what was I saying before that?
You were saying that you believe that the ego passes.
Oh yes,
with
yes. So I believe the ego is attached to our physical being, and our ego's job is to keep our physical body safe. And the ego is very limited, only limited to what we have experienced in this lifetime. So I think one of the first things we realize when we leave our body is that, oh, that was a dream. That wasn't me. That was me creating this dream for that experience. And you said something like that when your wife was in labor, when they were doing the C-section, you felt like an observer. And you're like, okay, this is what that feels like. Because that's what our soul wants. Our soul just wants the experience. Because our soul knows that that's all it is. It's a play. It's a movie. It's not real. So that's why our soul chooses these difficult experiences as having a child transition back to spirit before you. That's a very difficult challenge, but we signed up for, put me on that list. We signed up for that, we signed up for that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't have any, I will, as a concession for mostly entertainment purposes, will give the ego a character, but it's not bad.
Yeah.
It's in many ways it comes across as very loving. It's doing its best, but it really just wants attention and to and to be relevant. At least here, it's saying we really got this, and I'm like, okay, or trying to drum up some trouble as well.
Right.
All is okay.
Drama.
None of those are good. None of those are bad. They're just thoughts arising.
Like when we go to the movies, how many love to go see dramas? I don't like the scary, bloody. I don't like any of that because everything is vibration and that lowers my. But dramas, so the ego's trying to create drama. So hey, make the play of your creation a little bit more drama filled.
Yeah, a little more interesting.
Yeah. Wow, this has been so amazing. And you are in Costa Rica. How long have you lived in Costa Rica?
About 5.5 years.
Okay. That's one of the places I can say, one of the few places in the country I have been, not the country because I'm in the U.S., one in the world, outside of the U.S. I have been. I was in Costa Rica, what was it, winter of 2017.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I went with Humanities Team, which is a nonprofit organization, and their entire mission is to inspire the world to awaken to the universal truth of oneness. So we were both perfectly in alignment. So I was connected with them for a couple of years and went down to Costa Rica with them. But all I know, it was the west coast of Costa Rica, not the east coast of Costa Rica.
Okay. So, do you know if it was north or south? Were you?
I think it was south.
Okay.
I think I say south because I think it was south of the airport. I know the ride from where we were staying in the airport was a good long distance. At least an hour and a half to 2 hour ride.
Okay.
I'm thinking, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I actually don't know. I know I was in Costa Rica on the West Coast.
Yeah. No, that's all right. Yeah, that's where I live on the Pacific side on the West Coast.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and in a 2 hour drive here might be 45 minutes in the States.
Okay.
Because the road, different roads and
Okay,
trucks and whatever, the roads are smaller, but not that, it's not that much longer, but it's
one of the things I remember, I love hiking, but they would warn you about hiking in the forest because there was I think it was a yellow snake. It was one particular snake that if he got you, there's no way they'd be able to get what you need, like that, what do you call it when you the anti-venom for this snake. You would be like, you're like, I forget how short a period of time it would take, but when they and I'm like, rainforest, do I want
yeah, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I love hiking. I live in the Pocono Mountains. I go hiking all the time, but this one snake, I'm like, do I want to go hiking up to the volcano? I did. I was with a group of people and I felt safe, but I was like, why did they tell us that?
Yeah, I mean, just the snake is called a terciopelo.
Okay.
And it's bad, but they have there's places, but there's a period of time that you need to go.
Okay.
And get assistance, and I know someone that got bit by one, but he was like at night fishing in a river and stepped on one.
Oh.
But for the most part, not to say that they're not on paths, but if you're making a bunch of noise, on a regular hiking path, it's good for them to tell you. But if he had boots on and stuff like that, probably okay.
I don't remember. I think I had sneakers. I don't think I had boots at the time because it was more climate. But I'll know next time. Have some really high boots. Okay, that's a good point. Next time, that's what I'll do. I have some boots up to my knee, and stop while I'm walking down the trail. Okay.
Make some noise,
Make some noise. Okay, that'll work. This has been so wonderful. Thank you so much. We must do this again and stay in contact. This is great. Thank you so much for being my guest. I had so much fun. And please give your lovely wife and your children a big hug and kiss from me. Okay.
I sure will. And I will just over email, I'll send you, I can send you the Go Tell Others link if I find it.
Okay.
The Greg Good one, so you have like this proper spelling of the name. I know you wrote it down, but if I can find that thing. So.
Great. Also, I have brain fog. I'm going into ketosis. It's a new thing that I'm trying to take off weight quickly. And when you go, it's called the keto flu, and kind of gives you a little brain fog. But there was something I was going to ask, and now I can't remember. It's all good. It'll come to me, and I'll email you.
Okay. No problem.
All righty. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Caroline. I appreciate it.
Thank you. You have a great day. Okay.
You too.
We'll keep in touch.
Okay.